Are you all ready? Are you all ready? Are you all ready? Here we go. All right. And I know we have more folks in that lobby. They're being a little slow, but we're getting them. And welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Impact Lounge. Thank you for being here. For those who don't know, I'm Heather Mason. I'm the CEO and founder of the Impact Lounge, and really appreciate you taking time out of your day. We're going to have a fantastic panel, and then we're going to go upstairs and have even more fun. So I'll let them tell you about that. But just a quick note, March 4th, Art as Transformation, Redemption, and Life After Incarceration. Following the Tribeca premiere of March 4th, we're honored to be joined by Reginald Dwayne Betts and the filmmakers behind this powerful documentary. And I will let you talk about the journey that it traces of Betts, who had an extraordinary traversing journey from incarceration as a teenager, to then acclaimed poet, lawyer, activist, and MacArthur Fellow. So I will turn it over to all of you. Take it away.
Thanks, and thanks for coming out here. I know it's tough competition with the Knicks playing tonight. Try to get through this before the pregame parties. I just want to introduce myself quickly. My name is Ruvain Blau, and I'm a journalist with the City Reporter. It's an online local nonprofit news site. And I'm also the co-author of Rikers and Oral History. And I've been covering this world for close to 20 years in New York, primarily. And, I actually watched the documentary last night, and I was telling everyone here earlier that, there's a little fatigue. I do this for a living, and I read a lot about this and watch a lot about this. And frankly, I was truly blown away by the just how, the movie itself, how the story, the depth, the compassion, and just so much. I cannot rave enough about it. So I'm happy to kind of just have a conversation here and get it going with everyone here. I guess I would start with Dwayne and asking. One of the central themes of the film is the tension between who we are, who others believe us to be, and who we become. How has your understanding of identity evolved over the course of your journey?
I think, maybe the easiest thing to say is that from the point when I came home, one, I realized that I was never fully in control of my identity. And this is partly because you get out of prison, and I was 24 years old, but I had no real idea what I wanted to do. Somebody suggested that I teach in a summer program, and I thought, why would you suggest that I teach? And why would you suggest that I teach children? I mean, the last time you saw me when I was a teenager, I was either getting handcuffed or I was in detention. This doesn't seem to be the role. And then I taught, and I was good, and I liked it. And next thing you know, I'm thinking, oh, I should be a teacher. But that's like an identity that served me that just kind of fell in my lap. And then my life was consistently that way. And the thing that I didn't realize until much, much later, maybe part of doing this book is that maybe part of doing this film is that it's okay to still be in the process of discovering, as long as the thing that's holding me back from discovery isn't a sense of shame and a sense of frustration. And so even those early articulations of who I was discovering myself to be, I approached it with a sense of shame. Why are you asking me to be a teacher? I'm not worthy of that. But also, I'm going to do it because I have no sense of what I would be doing otherwise. When if I could do it all over again, I would say one of the things the world offers you is an opportunity to be wildly curious. And I could have took the fact that I was 24 years old without a career path as an opportunity and thought quite differently about the really cool things I got a chance to do when my peers were, doing whatever, working their first job, whatever it might have been that they were doing. I was doing something radically different that if I could think about it, if I could go back again, I would have embraced it.
And I know you talk about that a little bit, in the film about the kind of the imposter syndrome. So that, I appreciate you kind of going through that a bit. And this is for Valerie and Rob. How did you come about, the project, and why did you feel it was so compelling to share?
Well, I mean, if you listen to Dwayne for just a few seconds, you understand why we do the film. Excuse me. I've known Dwayne for we knew each other for a number of years before we started on this, and he was in an early iteration of a play, one-man play that he was working on. And I saw it up in New Haven and approached him right afterwards and asked him who's doing the film. If you spend time with Dwayne, I'm older than he is. I learn from him every minute. It's not about prison. It's not about incarceration. It's about life. And watching him approach everything that comes at him with an openness and a willingness to learn from it and a willingness to then share what he learns, which is the heart of teaching. It's just phenomenal to be around him. And there are just very few people who can process information and share it the way that he does. So, the film was one thing, but really just spending time with him is just an enormous privilege. And this week has been a blast for me because, we spent a lot of time in the edit room with watching him, but not being with him.
Hey, yo, they would not talk to me about the edit room.
No.
This is real. You got to understand that, like I'd be like, man, are they working on this film? I've seen no footage at all. And then you get something, and it's like, wow, they have been working. And then you make one comment, and then they send you something that's completely different. Like, all of the first footage has disappeared. I was like, wow, they have actually been working on this film. I mean, like, you know how when you know friends as MCs? And you just wait. I ain't even gonna tell the story, but like one time somebody called me and was like, yo, come through the studio. I checked my phone. I was like, oh, did you just tell? Bet, I'm on a train. I was waiting for that moment for the film. I was waiting for them to say, yo, we're gonna be in the editing room today. Come through. Never once.
No, because we wouldn't have gotten shit done.
I know.
Valerie, if I can you talk a little bit about what it was like filming, in the prison setting as well, like the challenges that came up with that?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first time I met Dwayne in person was at St. Bride's Correctional Facility in Virginia. And we showed up with cameras and just started shooting outside. And as soon as we put cameras up, security came out. And we're like, what are you doing? What are you filming? And Dwayne, does not give a rip. He's like, come on, bring the cameras. Let's go. And we were getting stopped at every door. And, prisons are notoriously not film friendly places. You have to send stuff months in advance. We had to send them every gear list down to the screw, and they're going down being like, you have this extension cord, you have this screw in your camera, you have this lens, you have this. So getting in and out with cameras is a challenge. But we kind of had the gift of going in with Freedom Reads, which comes with a lot of positivity, a lot of joy. People inside are happy to see us, and that's always a beautiful thing to experience. It's a gift. But the prison part of it is challenging. We in Virginia is especially restrictive. We shot some of the footage in the film is in California, which is a bit more film friendly. But, every prison is different. Every state is different. Every warden has their own rules. And some wardens would be like, we need to see everything you shot. And we'd stop at the end and we'd have to play back everything. And they'd tell us to delete clips. We couldn't show any prison staff. We couldn't show anything. So it's intentionally very restrictive. And we got as much as we could because of Dwayne and because of the Freedom Reads of it all. But yeah, filming in Virginia especially is quite restrictive. And, they don't want you there documenting them.
Dwayne, Valerie shared with me that, in California, before filming or before you performed there, actually, you met somebody who you knew previously. What's it like for you to kind of to go into these prisons and, after all these years of, your own history?
Virginia, yeah.
Oh, Virginia, I'm sorry.
So the question is, what is it like to go inside and meet people that I already knew?
Yeah, and more broadly speaking, like, what's it like for you to?
So the first one is interesting though because it does feel different, and actually it feels different meeting people that I knew inside than that way it felt when I first went into a prison that I served time at. The latter thing was it was harrowing, just because it was a different texture of memory, and it wasn't even that it was a horrific nightmarish place for me. It was just a place that represented prison for me. I was actually with Luke. We was at Sussex 1 together. They let us go back into the cell. I got banned that day though. I got banned from prison. This is the wildest thing ever. I mean, you have to be a special kind of human being to get banned from prison. I went and told the police that. They laughed. Said, "You not banned from prison, young man." Like, but and but I remember being there and I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I just I cursed a fair amount. And and but other prisons though, when I'm seeing people that I know, it feels like when I was inside, I once wrote a poem, and I said it doesn't matter what I do when I go home because the people who need to see it most, whether success or failure, won't. And I was just thinking of the fact that when I was inside, nobody returned to prison, and maybe I was in my early 20s. I had an inflated sense of my own self worth, but it's these small moments like this when you think about what your life might mean for somebody else. And maybe it's because at the time my life was more or less extremely fragile, and even if I couldn't articulate how grateful I was for my ability to really be healthy in a place where there's a lot of people around me who weren't healthy, I recognize that it's something I should be grateful for. And in a sense of like frustration and maybe insight, I was saying it doesn't matter what I do when I go home because the people who need to see it most won't. And it's weird. And I found this poem. I looked for this for years because I knew it, that I wrote it, but then because I couldn't find a poem, I thought I made it up because I'd be making things up too. But I found a poem, and I was so happy when I found the poem. I mean, I literally just found the poem this year. So I've been carrying the story in my head for years. I mean, that story is one of the sort of seeds of Freedom Reads, is one of the seeds of what I started to believe when I went back into prisons. And I say it now because that means that when I return, when I return to see people, when I see people I know, I'm not overwhelmed because I feel like I'm doing something of what I said I was going to do. And it is a thing to go back into prison and say that the way that I'm functioning and going back, like, isn't as a voyeur. I'm either coming to visit you in a visiting room, or I'm coming to read poems to you. I'm bringing books, and this might not be freedom, but it is a freedom.
And this one's for the filmmakers, but can you talk a little bit about how storytelling can kind of take the issue beyond sort of the facts and the figures and the sort of dark sort of reality of the story of incarceration in this country?
We were very intentional to tell Dwayne's story in the way that Dwayne talks about it. It is devoid of cliche. It's very open. It's funny at times, and we didn't want to do a sort of classic prison film. We wanted to talk to folks who had been inside, who had the experience, but wanted to sit with them, and we wanted to sit with them in a way that amplifies what they've been through, but also gives them a lush production and gives what they're saying lush production through animation, through the way we shot it, through the filming of Dwayne's one-man show, so that when you watched it, you were watching something, we hoped, that felt artful, that felt as elevated as Dwayne's poetry. We included Dwayne's poetry, and we really tried to create something that happens in a way that it touches your interior and is much more of an interior kind of film. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good answer.
Thank you.
How'd you decide on the structure, to use animation, as well, and with a mix of the interviews and other footage?
I always feel like, yo, there's like 17 answers for that, but like one answer is it was so many mediums to work through and deal with, right? And it's like, how do you organize so much information into like a cohesive thread, and then the synchronicity and multiplicity of the things that we were covering artistically, like created a venue for that to be the sort of vehicle, right? And actually, I think it's beautiful in that way. I'm talking like I'm an art critic. I actually have never said the things I've just said before in life. It's just like, but I actually do think it comes off that way. And I say this as a fan and as somebody who was watching it and who was kind of terrified of the fact that I had a solo show, and that was one way that I was telling this story. And then the fact that I know I was writing a memoir, and that was another way I was telling the story. And then we had some filmmakers that was going to tell my story for me, and then don't even invite me in the editing room ever, you know?
Not
But-
us.
Never. But no, I don't know what you think.
Well, we knew we had decades of your story to tell. We had your poetry. We had the one man show. We had the interviews. We had a lot of different themes and things to tie together. And so I was really confident that we could, because the thread is your voice. But we had to do it in a way where the cacophony actually made sense. And I've been doing a lot of work with animation. I have an amazing animator, Tom Curtis, who himself, he's given me permission to talk about this. He spent 10 years in prison. And, it informs the work that he does, but it also informs his passion that he brings to the piece, and particularly to this film. And so between Tom and Osei and Brian, our DP, like, we have real artists who were involved with this, and they were all in. And that just made it a real thing for us.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we in the edit, we talked a lot about balance and trying to balance all of the elements. On top of the ones you named, we also have archival and, animation and a score and all these different interview looks. And when we first started working on it, Robe said something that we talked about a lot in the edit, which that we wanted it to feel like a visual poem. We weren't trying to tell a traditional jail to Yale prison story that's fear-mongering and, sensationalizing crime and prison and law enforcement. And we wanted to take a very different approach. But yeah, balancing all of the elements was a big part of trying to tell the story.
Adam Weber, who was our editor, is an amazing filmmaker in and of itself. And then we got Brian Tyree Henry to do the narration. And just what he brings to it is utterly transcendent.
And I know this is for Dwayne. I know there's a lot of kind of really raw and kind of moving and intense moments. Was there anything, and this is kind of me going off stage a bit, but was there anything off limits? Said, hey, look, I don't want to talk about this. This is too
Man,
much.
listen, all of it was off limits. You don't understand that. So you must imagine that, like, I was in these moments that I was recording myself, right? And I spent most of my life never taking my own photo, and so like
What?
The archival tells a different story.
No, I know, but like the selfies and the because you could date it. I remember the first time I had that one of those recordings from Italy, and the thing was, the stuff I was going through felt so overwhelmingly oppressive and so singular and such an invention of my own brain. And I started recording myself so that when I got better, I could listen to it and see if I could recognize myself, or I could just listen to it and prove to myself that it actually happened. I've never listened to any of those recordings. I mean, I had one recording that I had played that was so terrifying to me that it made me go see a therapist. I was just like, somebody's not supposed to sound like this. And I was like, and why are you asking yourself questions and answering and recording it? This is crazy. This is not good, And but I was sitting at the Robe and Vow. I was like, this is not a part of the film. I was never sending it as a part of the film. I was sending it as evidence of myself that I wasn't ashamed of what was happening. And I could imagine him having a conversation. Do you think he sent this for the film? I don't know. He just sent this with no message or nothing. Well, what's the title of it? Chapel Street, 5:45 a.m. That's the title? Man, I just think he's giving us permission. And they just used it all.
It was for the film.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We asked Dwayne to start, if he felt up to it at times, to start documenting himself, because there was so many, restraints around trying to document him, partially due to your schedule and, just bringing it's not a verite doc. So we weren't just following you in your life, and we asked him to try to capture some moments on his own. And yeah, it's funny to know you didn't even think those were going to end up in the film.
Especially since you asked me. Wow. I probably
Yeah, don't you remember we sent you a tripod and a mic?
Well, yeah, and the mic, and I never used it.
I went to
New Haven
I can
to
tell you
teach
never used it.
I went to New Haven to teach you how to use the tripod.
I know, and that mic was really complicated. But I do know that that's a wind trap. The furry thing that you put on the microphone, I have learned what that is. I used to use it all the time to make myself look professional. And it's always like, it's no wind today. You don't need that.
We have a 3-minute clip for those who haven't seen the film.
Amazing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should show it.
Yeah.
I think they can cue it up.
I was in one of those old school prisons where the cells were parallel and stretched down the corridor as long as the Atlantic. I stand at my cell door from 6 a.m. until 6 a.m., listening to men shout. Call myself learning how to do a bid. Then one day I heard it. Hey, yo, send me a book. And I was perplexed. When they took me to the hole, they took all my property, including my books. But moments later, what cell? 25. If it was a paperback, it sounded nearly like birds' wings flapping. The only rule was that if somebody called out for a book and you had one, you sent it flying. I was a teenager in prison. Told you don't ask men in prison for anything. But those cells get lonely. And so I call out, hey, yo, send me a book. Young blood, what cell? 21. And it was this, Dudley Randall's The Black Poets. And I got lost in the discovery of County Cullen, Robert Hayden's, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, Lucille Clifton. What a curious thing to make a poet black and bid him sing.
What a curious thing.
What a curious thing to make a poet black and bid him sing. I remember reading County Cullen and really reading that line and being astonished because it's like, what a curious thing to make a poet black. It is this notion that you are a poet and then you become something else. What a curious thing to make a poet a convict and bid him sing. It is this question of what is it that your experiences call forth from you. I'm still figuring it out.
I knew the Black Poets wasn't mine and that I'd eventually have to give it up. So I pulled out a folder and hand wrote the poems I liked. I decided I was going to be a poet then, in that solitary cell.
And so from that point, you talking about December, August, September 1998, I get the Black Poets and I become a poet.
It sounds romantic now, but at the time, it was a necessity. I wanted to capture a feeling that would make a one-man cell manageable. And sometimes now, I crave for the feeling I had then.
Chills, really. It's just incredible. I cannot recommend, watching this enough. It's really just amazing. We're going to open up for a few minutes of questions and wanted to just, get any audience questions. If you raise your hand, I think they can get you the mic. Here we go.
They're coming.
Yeah. Oh. Is that on, Sakura? There we go.
What was something that you thought was so important then that now looking back, you're like, why did that even matter?
Oh, that's for me?
Yeah.
I know, right? I mean, it's interesting because it's so many things that that didn't matter then that matter now. And I went to prison when I was 16, so in some ways I feel like it's almost unfair because I've recognized that none of the things that mattered then matter now. Maybe, it's easier for me to say, what did I recognize mattered then that has stayed with me all of these years? Because I have a long list of what didn't matter. What didn't matter was, the Eddie Bauer coat that I wanted, that that I got in 1996 that made me cool. Um, the pair of Charles Barkley's that I wanted that my mom couldn't afford. What didn't matter, and I thought it mattered a lot, was the support of the teachers around me who I wanted to tell me that I was brilliant, who I wanted to tell me that I was destined for college, who told me I was destined to end up dead or in jail. I mean, that was one of the things that I think mattered. That mattered very, very little. Actually, that might be the answer to your question. What I recognized and I thought mattered, and I say that because a lot of these teachers imagine that I didn't care about what they felt about me, but they just say that to people they think are doomed to fail, so that they can make it easier for them to abandon you or dismiss you. But the thing that mattered, profoundly mattered, that I didn't know mattered then, is that I remember this teacher tells me when I was trying to get my high school diploma, she said, "Well, I'm gonna need you to come to school every day. I'm gonna need you to be a tutor." And I was like, "These guys are all older than me. How am I gonna be a tutor?" She was like, "Being a tutor has very little to do with how old you are. It has to do with how much you care. It doesn't even have anything to do with what you know. Half of the time, you're gonna be pretending to know things." I was like, "I've been doing this my whole life. What?" And this is literally the only reason why I survived prison. Because in that moment, I went from feeling like it was cool to imagine I was better than the people around me. I'd be like, "Y'all keep y'all cell phones on," when they say cut your cell phone off at events. You know.
We could do the next. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
In front and then behind.
Hello.
I wanted to say how really powerful that clip was, and it really made me. The what? Oh, I was just gonna say that it was really powerful, and it made me cry. And I wanted to, before the clip, I wanted to ask you guys how you managed to take so much footage. And I know you said that you had all this footage. I'm a filmmaker and I know I don't know how you managed to kind of break it all down and finesse it and bring it to that. And did you have like a guiding light, like a guiding thought process behind it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with Dwayne, we were lucky because there was so much material with Dwayne between writing and interview and the stage show and the poetry. But we started with a huge document that probably had the film is broken into chapters that probably had like 20 plus chapters that touched on some of the big themes that recur in his writing and in his, when he talks about his life and his work and his time in prison. And we just whittled it down and whittled it down and whittled it down until we had what we felt was kind of the essence of his story. And some of what you saw, we scanned all of his old poems. He was really generous, and his mom was really generous with giving us access to some of the boxes he shipped home from prison when he got out. And some of that steered it. Some of the archival that we could source steered it. And yeah, what steered it truthfully is just Dwayne's story,
See, I wouldn't even say that though, and I would actually say what steered it was a deep commitment that this kind of story mattered. And I forgot that I had sent y'all that thing. You understand that I had a publisher that I no longer work with because I had sent the same file to the publisher, and they thought like this doesn't represent X, Y, and Z. And instead of understanding that like this is the work of artistry is to sculpt the thing, is to see what's there even when you at the first phase and the first draft. And I think time and time again, what they recognize is that it was something to sculpt from the work. And so I think it was driven by my story, but I think it was driven by a deep belief that like, well, what if we ask for this other element that we missing? What if we ask for like this other sound? What if we ask for this other texture? And then like pushing me to write things. And there were some things that literally got left out, but they got left out because sometimes the part of the story, like about divorce or something, it's just this, that's the only thing that got left out because it threatened to overwhelm it, and it wasn't a film about that. But that was literally the only thing that we didn't cover. And in not covering it, we worked our ass off to figure out how to elegantly and meaningfully say something about it and not dance and evade it, right? And so I think that I'm actually really proud of what got covered. But I'm more proud of the phone call I just got because y'all think I was being rude, and I do get it. And I looked at the person that was calling me, and I had made this elegant joke, and I thought it was gonna be spam, so I could just click it off real carefully. And then I was like pure consternation, like, do I answer it? Do I not? Because it was Miles Betts, and that's my son. And I'm thinking, why is he calling me? He's like, Dad, where are you? I'm like, I'm at an event. Why? Because why you ain't home? Dude, I just said I'm at an event. Anyway, can I take a Uber to my friend's house? Yo, do you have to ask me right now? And then he said, listen, we try and watch the Knicks game.
See, I just want to say, make a film out of that. It's like there's always something. But I really, seriously, to answer the question, we always saw this as part bio, part essay. The insights were as important as the story. And to balance those things and to weave our way through his story, but always get back to his insights. That was where we had to land. And we felt like that's actually where the emotion was, not run away from the insights, run away from the context, run to it. Because when you have somebody who can articulate it, express it the way that he can, that's such a gift.
Do we have time for like one or two more questions? One more. Can we do behind you? Yes. We're going to do you and then you. And then we're going to do a lightning round of quick ones, okay? If we can.
Hello, okay. What impact do you hope that you can make with this film? And this is for the whole panel.
I just hope we have conversations about literature and mental health and love and family that we don't typically have.
Everywhere. In prisons, places like this, places where we don't normally have these conversations so that we can get as many people on the same page as possible.
Yeah, I hope we just add some nuance to the conversation around what incarceration does to people and what kind of people we're sending to prison.
Sorry, you can, yeah, it just, yeah.
Oh.
So on the law, it's 2027, and that's obviously not going to happen. Thank you, former Mayor Eric Adams. Right now, the earliest would be 31, 32, so they're obviously going to have to change the law or get some type of executive order. The closest, I was just in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn House of Detention is up. They raised the last beam with that project, but it's still 2 years away from finishing. And that is likely to be the first one of the new jails finished. So we're still several years away.
Oh, hi, Reginald. I just want to add to what you said about teachers suppressing those that they try to think that aren't going to make it. They also suppress the people that they do think. I think just in general, what's going on with Black children in schools is horrible. I also wanted to ask you, were you inspired by any other prison authors like Mumia Abu-Jamal or any of that while you were in? Were you exposed to their writings?
Yeah, I mean, I was inspired by a lot of them. So from him to Albert Semple, who wrote the autobiography of Racehorse, from Nathan McCall, from Man Child in the Promised Land, Malcolm X. But I was going to say Martin Luther King Jr., and I should, because a letter from a Birmingham jail. And but I was inspired by a lot of writers across the spectrum, and I think the people I just named is just brilliant writers that I would talk about in the same vein as, John Edgar Wideman, Toni Morrison, Inazaki Shange, Lucille Clifton.
I just want to say the last question for myself here, if I can. And I'm sorry, you guys. So I write about this a lot. I cover this. I follow this stuff. Why do you think it's so hard to make change, right? Like in New York State, 2 people were murdered, right? Like 2 years ago. The governor announced some proposals and, already they're behind. A lot of things aren't happening. Why is it so hard for this world to kind of grasp the horrors that exist in these places and to fix them or make it better?
I mean, I would probably argue that it's at least 2 reasons why it's challenging. One, is far easier to put money into fixing a problem like crime or violence than it is to put money into like preventing a problem like crime or violence, and we just know that to be true. 2, most communities don't like crime and violence, and so while we imagine Rikers to be horrible, most of us think that the people who are there deserve to be there. and that is just the fundamental, discrepancy in how we think and how we imagine ourselves to think. Because if we really believed that it was a horrific place, it wouldn't be this hard to get traction. And I think the third thing is, and the reason why it's hard to get traction on the second thing, is because we don't have really like adequate solutions to the problems that still plague us. If you get your car stolen and you live a working class life and that's the way that you get to work, and your car was paid for, you wasn't even paying no car note, and you had a Honda Accord that was going to get you 250,000 miles if it was going to get you 100, and you had 80,000 miles on it, but somebody done stole it and crashed it. And nobody is even imagining that as a use case for why the solution to crime and violence works. Because if you the person who just lost their car in that situation, you out of luck, and we all know that you out of luck. So at the end of the day, when it comes time to close Rikers, a lot of people are asking themselves, where do they sit on if this thing happened to me? And not even a murder, you know what I mean? And so I just think that we have to do a better messaging job. And I know this to be true because when I came home and I was talking about these things, people said, don't talk about violence. When people say, what did you do to go to prisons? Talk about how young you were. You are excellent at pivoting. What, you calling me a liar? Like, what does that even mean? So I think that that's why we don't have the success we want. But I think that that's why this film is important, because this film is trying to say we can have all of the arguments and still get to a place where people should have more freedom. So when my friends are up there talking about the crimes they committed, the whole film is making a case that they should be free. And then you actually see them free. And I think that is the rare film about incarceration these days, where you have somebody saying, I killed somebody, and before the end of the film, they are not in prison anymore. Before the end of the film, they are doing something meaningful. You know, we are just getting to that point. It is a challenge to believe that your life matters after having done something horrific, which means that that second category of people who really believe that people in Rikers deserve to be here is a category that most of us exist in.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all of this. Just want to remind everyone that Dwayne is performing upstairs shortly, and all welcome to attend.